Good evening, Ustad Atimad, Ustad Zineb. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for making it. Ustad Asma Duhan, hi. I hope you're doing well. Ustad Khadija Hendar, good evening. Thank you very much for making it to this live, which of course is going to be a relatively short live session, given the fact that I'm out of town and, but please check. Check first whether you can hear me clearly. Type 1 or 2 or another number indicating, or just say yes if you can hear me clearly, please. Thank you. Ustada Zineb says they can hear us. Thank you very much. So this is really nice. Would you kindly take the trouble to share the link to this live and answers that I because I have decided to come over, to talk to you, maybe because the exams are drawing near and some of you are busy working on their theses and you may have questions to ask that need an answer. So it is for this reason that I have decided not to skip today, despite the fact that I am out of town. But it does good to me too, because that's is one way of keeping this link. Now we are like a community where of friends, of course, in the first place, where we can exchange ideas, and we can reflect on each other's questions. So thank you. Again, I would like the people who are watching this live to hit the like button and to, if possible, to share the link. If you have a way of pasting the link in the groups that you have on WhatsApp and on Facebook and other platforms. Pikuto Q says, a new subscribe from Indian. Okay, hello, my friend. Thank you for joining us. You are welcome. Most of the followers here are Moroccans, but it's good to have this international perspective. This is really nice. Tanik Gilbertson says hi. Hello. Tanik Gilbertson, thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Yusuf Boadi, hi dear professor from Canada. That's really nice. So it's getting more and more international now. So we have a follower from Canada and one from, so Queen Maggie says, hola. Hola with double L. I don't know whether that's Spanish or, so just, so Queen Meiji or, Meiji. Tell us, where are you from? So we are from Morocco. So Philip Brawl, hola. Well, I think this is probably a language we cannot understand. Maybe Tagalog or another one. I don't know. So what are we talking about here? Because I just joined. So here, this is this live here does not have a. There's no specific topic, but generally this is academic talk, academic chat. Assalamu alaikum, Darius. Assalamu alaikum, Akram. Hello. Thank you. So Usada Samia Mustafir has joined us too. So for those friends who have just joined this live, this is an exchange of ideas concerning research. Well, I think there is a problem here again. Okay. I don't know. Someone is asking me as to whether I am rich. No, I am not. Just to. Okay, Zainab. Hello, dear professor. Hello, Usada. Is allowed. Non-academic talk certainly not be reacted to. So if there is a problem in research, in linguistics, in matters concerning English language, or aspects of the English language, you are welcome. Thank you. Okay, fine. Nice. Darius says my mom is Moroccan, so you are a Moroccan by virtue of your mom being one. This is really nice. So it's good to gentlemen, I don't know if there is a possibility of asking a question, then it's going to be fine. If there is a question you would like to paste here, it's fine. Otherwise, I don't know. 35 people are watching this live already, which is a good thing. Except that if there are, okay, so we have Rabsi Absalam is asking a question. Can a researcher go on a parametric test without meeting the criteria of normality, assuming there is normality of the distribution of the data? So this is Rabsi Absalam asking this question. Well, a rigorous analysis of a rigorous quantitative analysis of data necessitates that we watch out for every single step that we take. And parametric tests, which is the first choice of these parametric tests, as I said, are not without assumptions. There are certain conditions. In my classes, I call them a visa. So you need a visa for a parametric test. There are a number of classical assumptions, crucial of which is the assumption of normality when it comes to the t-test family. And also in correlation, you have the assumption of normality. That is to say, your distribution has to be normal or close to normal. That is to say, it should not significantly depart from the perfect normal distribution. What does this mean? You have to check for normality. You can, on SPSS, you can check. But there are also statistical ways for doing this. Now, the visual way is normally you can just check with one, because I'm reading these weird comments here, but anyway, we will ignore them for the moment. Never mind. The assumption of normality is required by t-tests, for example, and also by correlation, by some correlation, especially Pearson product moment correlation. Ustad Zainab, if the image is not clear, I think this is due to the problem in the connection that I have here in this place. I can switch to. So I think now it's the connection has been restored. I have now switched to 4G. It's like switching from parametric to non-parametric test. The Wi-Fi first. If it does not work, you switch, to the other alternative. Anyway, let me finish the argument made by the. Sorry, I don't know if there is a way. Nice. So I need to remove this. Okay, fine. Now, so for parametric tests like the t-test, like the Pearson product moment correlation, and other parametric tests, of course, these necessitate normality as an assumption. It means that if your data is not normally distributed, that is to say, if it departs from the ideal normal distribution. Ustad Zainab, is the image clear now, please? I would like to see here, please. Thank you. Now, if these assumptions are not satisfied, it means that you are not allowed to go to the parametric tests. You cannot conduct the t-test if you find out, for example, that the normality assumption is violated. Thank you. So normality can be checked by means of the box plots. You are given boxes with a line in the middle, and if the line is right in the middle, it means that your distribution is normal or close to normal. You may do that by the histogram, which is a graph, and you can see the curve there, and you can visually tell. So these are visual ways of doing this. But there is also another way, which is the statistical way of doing it. You have also QQ plots as well. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, box plots, QQ plots. You have a histogram. All these are visual ways, and they act in concert to tell you whether you have achieved normality or not. That is to say, whether you have achieved the visa or not. Darius, we are. What subject you're teaching, please? I'll let you know after I finish, Mr. Darius, this point, please. So just wait a moment. In the absence of normality, you are not allowed. So we have talked about the visual ways, but there is also a statistical way or a mathematical way, let's call it the numerical way. You just look at the number and you will see if you have normality or not. So the two tests, the two famous tests for normality are, number one, Shapiro-Wilk or Shapiro-Wilk, depends on the pronunciation, and also the Kolmogorov-Smirnov. Kolmogorov-Smirnov or Shapiro-Wilk. These give you a significance level, okay, that has to be from 0.05 on. Okay, so if you have Shapiro-Wilk yielding you, for example, a significance level of 0.06, it means you have normality. If it's 0.04, normality is violated. This is a bit confusing for so many students because in order to confirm a hypothesis, the p-value has to be lower than 0.05. So in order, as I tell my master students, and this is how they get hold of this fine distinction between the two concepts, when you measure normality, the p-value should not be significant, because if it's significant, significance is an index of difference. This is what you need to keep in mind, please. Statistically, when we're talking about significance, in measures of comparison, significance equals difference. It means that they are different to a large extent, or they are statistically different. Now, in measuring the normality assumption, are we looking for a difference? No, we are looking for similarity. Why? Because we wish our data, okay, we wish our data to we wish our data to look like the perfect normal distribution, so it has to be close to it. So we are looking here for similarity, and the index of similarity is when the p-value is from 0.05 onwards or upwards. I hope you understand this. So if Kolmogorov-Smirnov gives you 0.09, it means that what? So from 0.045 onwards, it's a measure of similarity. It means 0.09, which is higher than 0.05. It means that your distribution and the ideal distribution are not significantly different. It means that they are similar, which means that you are satisfied the normality assumption here. Okay, and then after you do this, so sometimes you find out that Shapiro gives you a score lower than 0.05, though this is unlikely, but you may find that. Okay, Shapiro gives you Shapiro-Wilk yields a significance level lower than 0.05, but Kolmogorov-Smirnov gives you a score that it goes beyond 0.05. What are you going to do here? So you opt for the one that gives you, that satisfies, that shows that you have satisfied normality, and then you can proceed safely with the t-test that you are conducting. Now, for measures like ANOVA, the assumption is not an assumption of normality, because normality normally works with the statistical measures that use the mean as a starting point, that work with the mean, that compare the means. In an ANOVA test, and the term itself refers or is an acronym of analysis of variance. ANOVA, it means analysis of variance. Okay, good. So ANOVA, which is analysis of variance. So here the assumption that needs to be met is not normality. The t-test, yes, because the t-test bases the comparison on the means. So it compares means. What is t-test? It's the comparison of means. The conclusion is whether the p-value there, the p-value that you will find out tells you whether the two means that you are comparing significantly differ or they only slightly differ. For ANOVA, no. What we are comparing is not so much, is not the mean, but rather the variance. The t-test takes as a starting point a measure of central tendency. ANOVA takes as a starting point the measure of dispersion. Okay, so what we need to satisfy when we run the ANOVA test is what we refer to as the homogeneity assumption. Homogeneity assumption means that the variance has to be homogeneous. How can we know? Again, there is a well-known test. So if Shapiro-Wilk and Kolmogorov-Smirnov measure normality, okay, the normality assumption. In order to measure the homogeneity assumption for tests like ANOVA, we use Levene's test, a test that is known as Levene's test. And you have an option when you on SPSS. If I had my computer with me now, I would show you how to do that, but probably in another lecture. So all that you need to do is to check a box there that makes you ask the computer to tell you whether you would like the homogeneity assumption checked. Okay, good. So if Levene's test yields a significance level that goes beyond 0.5, what does it mean? It means that your homogeneity assumption is satisfied, and therefore you can safely run your ANOVA test. If, on the other hand, the Levene's test yields a value lower than 0.05, for example, if it gives you 0.02, it means that the variances that you are comparing are different. Why? It's because lower than 0.05, this is what you need to bear in mind. A p-value lower than 0.05 in comparisons is an index of difference. A p-value that goes beyond 0.05 or 0.05, 0.06, and so forth, it's an index of similarity. So what are we looking for here? The term homogeneity itself conjures up the idea of similarity, and therefore the p-value has to be, beyond 0.05 in order to satisfy this. Which is better? Now, just in answer to C. Abdsalam's question, because I think, the one you are asked that. Good. Now, what happens? Now, compare the two risks that you run. Are you going? Which is better? Which is better? Is it to run a parametric test, which is said to be a robust test? It's the first choice for researchers. Is it better to go parametric even if you violate an assumption? Or is it better to check the assumption, and if you are unfortunate, you have you notice that this normality or homogeneity assumptions are violated, and then you switch to the non-parametric equivalent, which are less robust in a sense. The piece of advice here is to go the second way, that is to say, you check these assumptions and you switch to the non-parametric equivalent. Why? Because if it's a thesis, that you are talking about, my friend here, then I'd rather the jury member looks at the process of switching from parametric and the reasons why, and I'd rather the jury member noticed that I have gone the right way than to be criticized for who told you, for example, something like who told you, you might be blamed in this way. Who told you, for example, that even if you withhold information about the about homogeneity, about these classical assumptions. So you will always have this question: how do you know that your data is normally distributed? How do you know that you have legitimately, resorted to a parametric test like the t-test, for example, or like the ANOVA test? So it's better to check and to find out that it does not work and to switch to the non-parametric. It will by no means invalidate your work. For me, someone who does that will certainly be praised by people, not necessarily jury members. They may not dwell on these things, but later on, because people, after you have defended your work, there are chances for your thesis to be read by a number of people, and people will criticize you, of course, on that. Okay. Good. Thanks, Professor. Is there a way to eliminate outliers without affecting the data? Yes, you can do that. One way of doing it is to do it manually, but there are certain statistical techniques. It never occurred to me to come across a case like that. I'll myself check and let you know. But theoretically, when you random sample, when you make no sampling, no mistake in sampling, when your sample size is not too small, for example, or not too big, then the risk of outliers may not be brought into focus. All right? But this is an issue that I need to pursue and provide you later on with an amount of detail. Okay, good. Claudimar Bergok says, Professor, do you use Minitab? Well, Minitab is, is an alternative perhaps to SPSS, but it's not so frequent in statistical analysis, especially among those who are, reared in a tradition where, in social sciences, especially where quantitative data analysis is done by SPSS. So SPSS enjoys more popularity in the context where I belong to. So Minitab is not. So I don't use it, honestly. Ustad Ahmed says, how can we incorporate vocabulary instruction into teaching language skills? There are a number of strategies, Ustad Ahmed. Vocabulary instruction, needs to be part and parcel for every individual skill, including when you teach grammar, for example. Grammar, of course, in grammar we focus on the rules, but there are certainly, there are students who will learn a lot of vocabulary items, idiomatic expressions, linking words, and so on and so forth when you teach grammar. In writing, of course, you always need to introduce a certain, set of vocabulary items. For the strategies, you may highlight these words. There are different strategies, in fact. I cannot claim to know that, I cannot tell you that this is the right strategy. Different people will use different strategies. Why? It's because teaching styles differ. Learning styles also differ. And different teachers endeavor to teach, the vocabulary in different ways. The classical way would be to ask students, for example, to look up a word in the dictionary and look at the different uses of the word, and then you ask them to produce them in context. Sadat Ahmed, there are so many activities that one can do, one can come up with in order to teach them. But the bottom line here is that I do agree with you that the vocabulary component should not be ignored. After all, when we communicate, we understand what we are talking about by means of these lexical items. Okay, like nouns, verbs, and also idiomatic expressions and other, aspects of vocabulary. So I fully agree with you. And to teach vocabulary, there need to be, there is a whole gamut of activities and strategies for teaching vocabulary. And by the way, a lot of research has been done on vocabulary learning strategies and vocabulary teaching activities as well. All right, good. In social sciences, I think it's rare to meet normality, since that's Absalam Rabsi. In social science, I think it's rare to meet normality since we're dealing with people such as students and teachers. So might end up with falsified data which will affect normality. No. Students and researchers usually meet normality, and if you don't meet it, what is wrong with that? Because there is always this statistical solution. As long as you do things objectively, you are not to blame. That's it. Just go on a step-by-step basis. Do what you are supposed to do as a researcher, and if you switch to the non-parametric test, where is the problem? There is no problem whatsoever. But of course, there are researchers who pride themselves on achieving this, on satisfying normality. For some of them, this calls for a celebration. I don't know why they have this in mind. But in any case, if you don't need to meet normality, it's not a big deal. Just go ahead and do things the way they should be done. Salam, thank you for your contribution. Salma Abbas says, Professor, can we test something without giving a treatment? Just a pretest to ensure participants' levels and a test to see the differences in results experimentally. Yes, there is what we call an ex post facto design. Where you may, but this will depend on the way you formulate your hypothesis. In a true experimental design, you have to have two groups. One referred to as the experimental group, where, and to this group you give a treatment That is to say, if you're talking about, using new vocabulary teaching strategies, to take up Ustad Atimad's example, and you test them against the old strategies, teaching vocabulary using new strategies. Let's hypothesize that there are a set of new strategies versus learning vocabulary using the old way. So what you need to do here is perform an experiment. That's the ideal way of doing it. So you can separate the group of students in two groups or subgroups or whatever, and one group needs to receive a treatment that is teaching using this new approach. I mean, the new vocabulary, using these new strategies, and the other ones will learn in the normal way, in the old way. And if you have given them a pretest, the pretest should be the same, by the way, for everyone, and the post-test should be the same for everyone. Here, whatever difference you will find between the two groups in the post-test, this can, to a large extent, be imputed to the new strategies, for example. All right, nice. Now, sometimes, if it's academic level, here, Salma, Miss or Mrs. Salma Abbas, if your hypothesis is just to see that, for example, students' vocabulary size, imagine you have this hypothesis, students' vocabulary size increases, as the student increases academically, or as the academic level goes up. You see, as the students advance in this, through the semesters. Here, yes, you can have a pretest, at the beginning of S1, and then you may, if it's a cross-sectional design, then you can go and check with S6 students, and you collect data from them, and you compare, the performance of students. For example, if it's a general test, by the way, it has to be unified for the comparison to be effective. You see? So in this case, yes, you can do that without having recourse to the experiment. All in all, this will depend on the variables that you have. This will depend also on the way you formulate your hypotheses. Okay, nice. Salma Abbas, I hope I have answered your question. Mr. Anas Kamal says, Professor, does purposive sampling hinder the credibility of the data? If yes, how can we ensure the data is credible? Purposive sampling, by the way, see Anas Kamal, is not a good way, is not a good sampling method for a quantitative design. Okay, purposive sampling is generally in qualitative design, where you need, just a few elements that you need to consult, maybe to explore data. But for purely, no, I'm sorry, I may have confused that with convenience sampling. I'm really sorry. So you say purposes hinder the credibility? No, it does not hinder the credibility. In fact, because you are afraid in purposive sampling, you resort to purposive sampling because you are afraid that other random sampling methods, may cause, for example, you may collect fewer, for example, females than males, or fewer age groups than the other groups, and you will fall in this problem of comparing what is not comparable. Okay, so again, purposive sampling depends on the variables that you want to highlight, the ones that you want to focus on. So if you have gender as a variable, then you have to make sure that you have as many females as males, or if they are different, they should not be, for example, 30 versus 35, so 30 males, 35 females, this is still comparable. But if you have 60 females, if you don't do it this way, and maybe 20 males, and you compare, then of course this comparison will be certainly affected by this type of sampling. Thank you, Asma, marhaba, thank you so much. And before I proceed with the other questions, I'm sorry, I have to say something. It's a word of gratitude to a professor. a colleague who I have never met in person. We know each other online, but she did a great favor to the Facebook page because she shared it with the people that she has in the group, and she has a large number of followers. And she had this generosity of highlighting the qualities or the character. She highlighted the good points. I mean, the advantages of following the page. And as a result, there were around, between 100 and 200, that's for sure. Participants, thanks to her that a lot of our friends from the southern parts of the country, got to know about the Facebook page and therefore the channel. This professor is called, okay. This professor is Professor Sana Saoudi, okay, who is also a teacher, and she's doing a good job. Apart from from her videos, I gather that she speaks English in a native-like fashion, and she is also gifted in German. Even her German is native-like, and she has tutorials, or videos to teach, English and German. So this is, I don't know whether she is with us here, but in any case, I feel, the need to thank her in this live session. And I tell her, Allah yarham al-walidin, thank you for your trust. Okay, now let me go back to Salma said, okay, so for Salma, it's fine. Si Abdul Amin says, in your experience, sir, where do you stand on using L1 in classroom setting? Recent comment has been given to Dr. Krashin and replied, no harm, although it's not just no harm. It's not just no harm. Si Abdullah, current pedagogical approaches to language teaching, or current thought in language teaching requires that it's not just the mother tongue, it's the languages that I think I talked about part of this because there was a discussion yesterday on this, and the idea is that today in multilingual education there is a pedagogical approach referred to as translanguaging approach, where and people now are distinguishing two types of ideologies in language teaching: a strictly monolingual ideology, which says that translation kills the language, using the mother tongue will contaminate your English. But let me give you a simple example, Si Abdullah, since you asked about my stand, and I'm saying that loud and clear. I am for the idea of, I will not say tolerate, but encouraging students in a task when they are on task. It does not mean that on the day of the exam they will have to mix languages. And no. I will not tolerate this. Not a single word will be tolerated. But in the process of teaching, let me give you an example. Just an example. Imagine you ask a student to answer a question or to talk about something. You give them an in-class task, and you ask them to prepare something to say about a given phenomenon, or to describe someone, let's say, someone you admire most physically, and of course they can describe them in terms of the behavior and so forth. Then the student has a lot to say, but because they cannot, for example, describe someone physically because they do not have enough adjectives to do that, but they can still talk about the person. Just imagine you have the situation in classroom. Many students who are in classrooms where the teacher prevents them from expressing themselves in other language, from using a single word, because there are teachers like that. It's not the teachers, there is a mindset like this, thinking that by preventing them from using other languages, they will learn more and they will excel, and so on and so forth. But think of this example that I have given you. How many students are prevented from expressing themselves only because their their ideas are short-circuited by this lack of knowledge, of linguistic knowledge. And think of the advantage and the consequences of allowing the student to describe someone, and when you tell them, if you cannot find the word in English, say it in another language, and then continue the flow of talk. Here you are developing fluency. Here you are developing this self-confidence in the student. So why are you going to blame them on the use of certain words at a time when their ideas are good ideas? They can provide amazing, descriptions, using English, of course, but also using words in case they are blocked. This is like a scaffolding type of thing. It's like scaffolding. It's a scaffolding activity, in fact. So this is what we refer to as translanguaging. And it's the same thing when you ask people to work in groups, students to work in groups of 2 or 3 or 4, pairs. For 2, it's pairs. And then you give them a task, and when you hear them discuss things in Arabic, say, oh, don't use Arabic, use English. No, I'm afraid this is not a good way to do it, because they are on task. Because your job is not to, your job as a teacher is to make them, do the task and do the task correctly. So if they discuss it partly in English, partly in Arabic, there's no problem. But the understanding here, is that on the day of the exam and in their actual use of the language, that's why translanguaging is a pedagogy. It should not be mixed with the translation or mixing language or being permissive like that. No, if there is a single word from another language on the day of the exam, it has to be penalized, okay? But you use translanguaging, you use other, systems, linguistic systems, in order to perform a given task, okay? Which is better according to you, if there is a concept or a proverb or whatever, it depends. So I'm talking in general. So if there is a concept that the student cannot really understand, which is better? Is it to explain it in English on the assumption that you are, you using another language will contaminate their English? Or is it to tell them in another language or in 2 other languages? I usually use the French equivalent, the Moroccan Arabic equivalent, the Amazigh equivalent, even if I know that some students may not understand it, but I do use it just to show, to point out to the similarity that exists among languages. So obviously, as a pedagogy, and by the way, it's not just my hunch, it's also the finding of a whole gamut of research. There are a lot of articles, there's a plethora of theses that continue to be produced, because that's the topic of this part of the 21st century. It's multilingual education. It's translanguaging pedagogies. So there is no harm. It's high time we started, getting rid of this monolingual ideology. So using features from different languages should be looked at as a strength, because the student has other resources available, to communicate. Okay, that has psychological underpinnings. That has psychological, consequences, of course, because when you don't know, I don't know, teachers do not seem to hark back to their days when they were students. Do you know the positive impact this will have on you, on your self-confidence, when you raise your hand and say something in class and the teacher says very good? You see? So which is better? Is it to have the student raise his hand or her hand and say something and maybe uses a couple of words in Arabic with a smile, with a laugh, with I don't know, and you say very good, that's really nice, and you may, in your own way, in your nice way, you will say, well, that thing you said in Arabic, in English, it's like this. Do you think that the student will repeat that in Arabic? Highly unlikely. Okay, and also this can work against the phenomenon of anxiety, and it adds to the motivation of the student. It emancipates them from this fear of not looking like being on the level, and it widens this gap between the teacher and the student. The teacher will remain like it's the ideal of the god of languages, and then the student is there, with all the imperfections. No, this helps bridge the gap and make communication successful. in the classroom. I hope I have reacted to this issue that continues. It used to drive a wedge among scholars, but now there seem, wherever there is a study, I assume I have read enough articles, and I even produced one on the issue, and many people are in favor of experimental methods. Experimental, studies showed the potential, the pedagogical, psychological potential of a translanguaging pedagogy. Okay, nice. Cyril, see, I appreciate your sense of professionalism. We are in a real need of statisticians in our Moroccan universities. Professors are making immense effort to simplify statistics. Thank you very much, Salam. Despite the fact that I never claimed that I'm not a statistician, by the way, but I am using statistics, a portion of statistics, to tell you the truth, that can be applied to the field of second language acquisition. I will get back to the idea that we are lifetime learners. You see, every time I myself, do you think that I know everything in statistics? No, I don't. And I don't shy away from saying it in public, because that's a fact. You see? So the more, as William Labov says, the more we know, the more we find out. So we always need to do readings and to ask people and to talk and to do, to conduct studies, etc. This is how we learn. Thank you. Ustada Khadija says, what criteria is taken into account, are taken into account to assess the worthiness of a research question? Thank you. A research question, let me say a couple of things about this. That's a very good and a very relevant and pertinent question. Now, a research question is one that helps the reader see the whole scope, the scope of your paper or of your thesis. Okay, so it has to be general enough. And a research question has to yield or has to make the researcher derive hypotheses. Where do we get our hypotheses from? It's from the research questions. Okay, that's the second criterion. A research question also has to be researchable and feasible. Researchable, for example, it needs to yield itself to a research enterprise. Well, when you ask a question, for example, what are, I'm very spontaneous. It can be an advantage and disadvantage, by the way. Well, let's say, what are the physiological, factors that are involved? Let's hear this crazy question. It's spontaneous, excuse it, but I think it serves the purposes here. Because you want to be scientific or ambitious, you can ask this question: what are the neurological, factors that contribute to the production of, for example, the simple past? Is this researchable? You may say yes, but not perhaps in the context where we are, in the type of research we are conducting, because this needs a neurological analysis. So this is, you are in biology, you are in medicine, you need a lot of instruments, you need, a good knowledge of the structure of the neuron and the chemical composition and how, neurotransmission takes place, and you need to know the mathematics there and the equations and the formulae that you have there, and then you need to correlate it, or you need to to check its impact on here. This type of question, for instance, which is spontaneous, I admit, but I think it answers this question. It gives you, this is an example of a research question that is not easy to research, so it's not really researchable. Okay, so handle only what you can handle. Ask a question about that you can handle. Ask a research question that you can handle. Okay, so another thing about the research question is that it should not be a yes/no question. Better, it should not be. Perhaps I am exaggerating, but it's better when it's not a yes/no question. It's not because you have eye to see movement there, no. But a yes/no question is very restricted. You say, For example, do the students show any positive attitude towards the context of their learning context? If the answer is yes, then what? It will not give us enough scope, in our discussion, and therefore will be very limited. A research question should better be asked, it should indicate some sort of generality. It should be general enough to guarantee that in our discussion there will be a discussion. It will not be dry like that. Yes, there is. No, there isn't. And then you, for example, does academic level have an impact on the acquisition of blah blah blah? Yes, but or no, then what? Therefore, it's better to ask a question using to what extent, for example. There is a difference between saying, is there an impact of X on Y, or what impact, if any, does X have on Y? This is not a yes-no question. Do the students feel okay? Does the teacher's feedback help students become accurate? Yeah, this is a yes-no question. The answer is either yes or no after you run the statistics. But compare this with to what extent? Because the answer is to a large extent, to some extent, to no extent, to a large extent, but, and you may even delve into some factors trying to explain why you have obtained that type of result. Okay, I hope you got the point here. Miss or Mrs. Khadija Handar. Lamia El-Kahri says, here comes the value of CDP, that is continuous professional development. It's the only way to keep teachers and supervisors abreast of the latest pedagogical. Yes, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's true. And in Morocco, we are fortunate because I had occasion to meet supervisors who were very knowledgeable. We should be proud of the supervisors that we have in the country. Really, really knowledgeable, and they read a lot, and they can discuss all sorts of issues ranging from second language acquisition to first language acquisition. They can discuss even syntax, phonology. They can talk to you about the history of language teaching. They can talk about everything, and they know. So this is really, really nice. So I am confident that whenever there is a new pedagogical approach in any reform that is instituted, I think the contribution of the supervisors will have a great weight. Okay, nice. So thank you, Lamia, and I fully agree with you, Lamia El-Qahri, when you talk about continuous assessment, continuous assessment too, but continuous, professional development is of paramount importance. Why? Because we have to develop with the development of life and of different approaches. The world is in constant, is very dynamic. So the language teacher has to be dynamic as well. Every now and then there are pedagogies that get outdated and new pedagogies that are introduced, and so on and so forth. Therefore, you are absolutely right, Lamia. We do need, these sessions for professional development. Thank you. Mr. Rabsi Absalam says a research question should be operationalized. That's true, because that's why I said, Si Absalam, that the research question it should be general enough, because it contains, or it includes, variables in very general terms, but when you come to your hypothesis, it's there where you operationalize. Your objectives and hypotheses are operationalizations, especially in the hypothesis. It's there where you decide which aspect of the variable you will investigate. So I fully agree with you, Siad Slam. Okay, Sada Khadija says, yes, thank you so much. Marhaba, thank you very much. Conceptualize and look for the variables to define them. That's absolutely right. Yeah, so that's the difference exactly between a research question and a research hypothesis. But for operationalization, there is no harm. It's not, be encouraged to talk about that in your introduction. Say that explicitly. Say that, for example, this variable has a number of aspects. Different people have talked about different aspects of this variable depending on what you're talking about. But in this piece of research, I define this variable as, consisting of X, Y, Z. It means throughout your paper, you will analyze only X, Y, and Z. You will not analyze F and G, etc. And nobody will blame you when you operationalize, because you are making it there, you are saying it, you're making it loud and clear, you are saying it loud and clear that you will only focus on X, Y, and Z. Okay, nice. Thank you. I don't know if there are other, questions. Selma says, sir, are the data of a quasi-experimental design, post-test groups, etc., good enough for a PhD thesis? Post-test groups, i.e. no treatment. Selma Abbas, I will say what I said before. If it depends on your hypothesis, because some hypotheses indicate that you will run an experiment. But in an ex post facto design, you need to formulate a hypothesis that tells you that you will not have any treatment. For example, the clearest thing is academic level, okay, or the institutions. For example, faculty of law and economics versus faculty of letters, or public private. Here you don't need experiments. The distinction is already made. So you will go and collect the data and you do the comparison. This is ex post facto design. Okay, but if you claim that there is a new approach or a new strategy, a new teaching method that you want to try because you will have training. Okay, for example, if you would like to train a group, if you want to see, for example, whether a critical thinking approach is more useful than the other one, approach X versus approach Y to teaching critical thinking. It means what? It means that you have to have two groups. One group will be taught using this, method, and the other group will be taught using this method, and will compare. And you still need to have a control group in this regard. But if it's a general, issue, it means that this is amenable only to, an ex post facto design. Okay, so Selma, if you are concerned with this, I would really like to see your hypotheses. So you may send them in as a private message. Okay, nice. So is there any other question? Or shall we call it alive today? Anyway, in the absence of more questions, we can call it a day. Okay, I am on duty in another city, and then I will. I will go back, because maybe you miss the board that I usually use, and you miss the computer screen. So I'm just using your phone to talk to you. So this is it. Anyway, I would like to thank you very much for joining this live session, and tomorrow, inshallah, we will meet and we will talk. I will decide, and if there is no special request in the private message, I will talk about, either I will finish with syntax, I'll talk about NP movement in passive constructions, or I will talk about distinctive features. But anyway, both of them will be, it's just the ordering, but both of them will be, will be discussed and will be, covered, of course. We are in need of these sessions. Thank you, Si Abdeslam Rabsi. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you here. Thank you very much. I wish you a good night, and let's meet tomorrow, inshallah. Thank you, everyone who is writing these nice words of gratitude. Have a good time, and thank you.